So, what do you guys think about the whole living forever thing?
I mean, it sounds appealing at first, and like a lot of people like think that, oh, I want to be immortal and all that. And obviously, like start thinking deeper. Like, I don't really want to like live forever because I see all my like loved ones and relatives pass away. Like, you're sitting there waiting with like maybe I don't know. It doesn't seem promising to me.
Well, yeah. For me, it's the same thing as you, Aiden. I've watched a lot of movies that wherein the main character would live for a long time, and I do think it's going to be a bit tiring since you have to adapt to change, and yeah, you're going to see your loved ones die, which is a big problem. So yeah,
I don't know though. Like, 'cause maybe we're just like young, so
yeah.
we don't really know about like. Maybe when we get old, we might change our minds.
Yeah, it's that whole spiel about young people talking about eternal youth.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does.
Well, there are like two ends to this. Because, of course, if you watch like elf literature, for one, usually their peers stay alive forever. Or when they lose someone, like in Frieren, they just learn to disassociate.
Oh yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
easier. Or other than that, there's like a practical end to it. What do you mean by live forever? Will your body age what you want? Will you be trapped in like a eternally crippling, prison of flesh? Or will you be forever young and your body forever young also?
Plus, it depends. If your mind can handle all that memory,
Oh yeah.
would you really be able to remember all those people from back then?
And
And
also,
then,
can you like make your own endpoint? Like you say like, oh, I'm satisfied with life. I will just like pass away now, or do you like actually live forever? Because at that point it becomes a curse, right? You can't.
Get that?
Well, so with that, I guess we'll be taking a deep dive into stem cells. So, stem cells, the claims, the controversies. So, the whole idea between the science and the how people look at stem cell treatment, stem cell pills. So, it's that whole idea that these little cells become these different cells in the body, and it can somehow keep eternal youth. That's what a lot of these pills claim. So we'll be talking about that today. So I'm Inea.
I'm Miguel.
I'm Aiden.
I'm Goro.
So yeah, we'll cut that out. We'll cut that out. Okay.
Different tradition, different transition.
Yeah.
Kasi from the conversation we were having, your transition into the topic was not very good.
That's fine.
Yeah.
No.
Now we'll be talking about stem cells. Supposed to kind of pivot away.
That's fine. That's fine. Kayo, if you guys wanna like redo that.
Okay, let's pretend that you just finished
Okay,
talking
yeah.
about that shit.
Okay, so you guys can be the one to pivot into it. Kayo.
So like,
Sana, yeah, I'm gonna do. Pero, um, the obsession is quite common though. Like, a lot of people talk about trying to stay young. A lot of people have a hard time with the fact that they're aging. Because a lot of people go to the mirror, 40s, 30s, before they get desensitized, once they reach that landmark, they look at their wrinkles, they see how old they feel in comparison to the youth, in comparison to their younger siblings. Like, oh, I'm so old. Pero people do try to take measures to ensure that they stop aging, or at least they like to believe that they'll stop aging, or that they will push back at least the physical effects of it. So then they take like supplements, like vitamins that they think will keep them young forever, the creams that they think would remove their wrinkles,
The entirety
stem cell
of skin.
pills, stem cell pills that supposedly rejuvenate them from the inside out by
Okay.
replacing dead and dying cells.
Yeah.
What do you think about stem cells?
I mean, are you really gonna get all the benefits of it just by like eating it? Isn't that the whole thing of just like, oh, you eat it and then you become it? It's kind of like, I'm not. It's not really a thing, right?
you become what you eat, type stuff.
Yeah, like the you are what you eat
You are what you
ideas.
eat.
I'm like, really?
Uy!
Isip ko sabihin ko. Gusto ko sana i-incorporate yung kay Indiana Jones. Alam niyo yung movie niya?
Pwede!
No,
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
you
go,
just
go.
go. Especially
Yeah,
if you have
yeah.
pop culture references, parang with
Yeah.
common things about
Well,
it.
it's not really pop culture. It's been a long time since the movie was released,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Jones is
still
pop
pop
culture.
culture, man.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
right.
Price chicken though.
yeah, if you guys know Uncharted or Indiana Jones, there was this one time where in Indiana Jones went into a cave and tried to get a cup of what do you call that? Like an immortal,
Fountain of Youth.
the Fountain of Youth cup, and it actually works. However, and people greeded for it. So the problem there is, yes, there is greed when it comes to gaining eternal youth. However, what happens after that? What happens if you gain the eternal youth? Would you be able to uh, live for that kind of law? For that law, right? Uh, Again, the fact comes in that your family will die and you will not. You will be able to invent a lot of things. If you're an inventor, you'll be able to do a lot of things. You'll be able to trip, maraming trip, right? So, however, would you really be satisfied with all of that? Is that really your goal? I think it depends on the person. So, however, for me or for us, we don't really think that living forever is the best way to live, right? Rather the experience with the people that you live with. So being able to suppress your physical aging, it's good, I guess.
Some
Uh,
extent.
to some extent, yeah. But
Yeah.
your mind will. How about your mind? How about your mental? It's not really the best. That's what I think. Um, so what you guys said about stem cells, I'm not really that akin to it. However, I'm not really that into it.
But you can kind of understand where the insecurity is coming
Yeah,
from,
the
right? Because
insecurities come
once you
from.
age, or when you begin aging, there comes a point where you feel like you become irrelevant, like you're a relic in the past. And somehow, remaining young, looking young, is more than just a beauty standard. Kind of still retain the fact that, oh, I'm not too old yet to be a contributor to the society. I'm not just a dependent.
Also, there's
Yeah.
the pride fact, wherein not really discriminating, but my mom or my dad, my mom specifically, she really loved looking young, and she always loved to boast. She always loved to boast about it with her friends, saying that, oh, you look really young. What do you do?
Or
And
like yung parang like, oh, I'm like 45 pero
yeah,
30 pa.
It
yeah,
sounds like a
Yeah,
Greek
yeah.
fable where the gods will punish her for her hubris.
yeah. So yeah, my mom was like 50 back then, but people were saying she looked like 30s, late 20s, and she was happy about that. Uh, so I guess there is a pro to it uh, for other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just physical, it's also like psychological.
No,
Yeah.
it motivates your ego
Yeah.
a
Since
lot.
it's somewhat desired in society, well, you get the ego boost from that.
Yeah. There's also this whole norm of like the beauty standards. There's a lot of aging that's actually targeted to women. So the whole thing about like makeup, skincare, that whole thing is like prevent aging,
Yeah.
so you keep young, you keep beautiful, you keep. And it goes back to those same points that you guys mentioned. They're keeping relevant in society, making sure that you're still up with the trend, and just trying to be being able to participate.
Yeah,
Basically, it boils down.
a physical trait that my mom really wanted to get rid of was the varicose veins. She didn't like the image of the varicose veins since it made her look really old. And she decided to do some pills on that. Pills, lotions, any kind of treatment. She went to Facebook, to any kind of social media platform that would promote those kinds of like treatments. And there's the idea of desperation. And when you're desperate, you would do anything, right? And so she went into Facebook one time. She saw this doctor, uh, and yeah, she believed it. She bought it. She put it. The first thing she bought was like a pad on her feet that would remove all the toxins. Do you guys relate? Yeah.
Relate.
No, I
My,
mean,
my dad has
yeah,
those.
their
I know
parents.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but my mom did that, and she influenced my dad. Then after that, my mom bought some pills that would no, not really bad pills. Not like it was labeled as vitamin C or something. Like it was this orange. It was these orange pills. I'm not really sure about the name. And she said that it would be good. So she let me take one, and after that my tummy ache. So
Gosh.
I wasn't really sure about that. But for her it worked, and yeah, she she influenced my dad. She influenced her sisters, and her sisters influenced her back, and it,
Parang went back and forth.
I know.
yeah, it
It,
grew.
Yeah.
It
kind
grew.
of grows.
Yeah,
The
it
community
grows.
grows.
Yeah.
Word of mouth, whatever.
Yeah, desperation is a really big factor when it comes to these kinds of like physical changes to the body of a human.
Yeah, I get you.
So, what are we going to talk about today?
Okay, so today we're gonna be looking into stem cells, what they do, treatments, and you mentioned earlier these pills that are circulating online.
It's supposedly magical. It can cure
Yeah,
everything.
everything. Like you go online and it's like, oh, it can cure cancer. Oh, it can cure your swollen eye.
Or you take like 3 pills and you become an infant again.
Parang they're touting it as like the holy grail of
Yeah.
body.
Diba? The Holy Grail, but it's just a pyramid scheme and all the description. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about stem cells. What are stem cells?
Okay, so stem cells are basically these little cells in our body that are basically the foundation for everything. So when we were still like in utero, so we're still like a singular cell going into like multiple cells. These were the cells that started all. These are the ones that developed into the different organs of the body. So they basically self-renew. They make a lot of copies of themselves, and they differentiate. So they turn into different organs, different parts of the body. All of those are just something that stem cells really do. So there are different types of stem cells. So one, the more common one is embryonic. Yes, embryonic is one I mentioned earlier. It's the one when you're babies. So basically, because they're embryonic, they give rise to every single cell type in the body. And the next one is multipotent.
Pluripotent.
Yeah, there's pluripotent, and then there's multipotent.
Yep.
Yeah, so multipotent is the one that adults have. We have, so it's somatic. It replenishes cells. It's basically the same ones in our bone marrow that produces new blood cells.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's also, you mentioned earlier, pluripotent. These are the ones that are more common in like the stem cell treatments nowadays, like the induced pluripotent ones. So it basically is cultivated in a lab and it's made to convert to specific tissue cells. So these are the ones that come into treatments for cancer, leukemia, spinal diseases.
Alzheimer's on occasion. And a
Yeah.
couple of other things.
Yeah. So basically, how it works is they usually inject stem cells or they introduce new stem cells into the body.
How?
And so basically, one example we could look at specifically is yung bone marrow transplantation. That's technically a form of stem cell therapy.
That's the one clinically proven.
Yes, it is one of the ones that are clinically approved. So basically, with like a syringe, they take bone marrow from a compatible donor and they inject it into another person's bone marrow to introduce more healthy bone marrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've mentioned earlier that there are different kinds of like stem cell therapy, but we'll just focus more on like whether they're approved, experimental, or not approved. So basically, what makes it approved, like the one I mentioned earlier, is basically it's backed by different agencies, the FDA, the EMA, the PMDA, yeah. And so there's a lot of different agencies who cross-check the research, they double-check it, and they just make sure that it's safe for everyone because stem cell treatment is like really new and we're kind of not sure if long term it's gonna be okay. But this is the one that at least has some degree of a safety net. There's others then that are still experimental, so it's still in the process of getting approved. It's not fully approved yet, but we're getting there. We're studying it, and it's investigational. It's not. It doesn't have formal approval yet, but it's kind of promising. And then there's last one, which is the ones that are the most common, which are the proven ones. So you have these things where you eat the stem cells,
You eat the stem cells.
Yeah, you eat the stem cells, you eat the placenta. These kind of aren't approved in the same way as the other two are. Like, they don't really go through the same process. So they're really scrupulous. They're very much unproven, and they're they're kind of harmful.
Yeah, and even then, I wouldn't really say a separate note, but on a more extreme note, when stem cells as a therapeutic method or the use of them was introduced into the country, at least I heard that a lot of doctors were coming up with titles. I am stem cell, I am qualified to be able to do this treatment on you.
Self-proclaimed.
Self-proclaimed, yes, exactly that. And even then, they would inject you pa with things, despite there being no clarification that they've been trained or that they have the materials to be able to do it.
Do they have
So-
proof that they've done it
No,
with other subjects?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So this is besides the pills on a more extreme level.
Yeah, but I kind of do want to circle back a bit and just clarify that stem cells, even though they can like differentiate into all these different cells of the body, they're not magic as these,
Yeah.
as these
These
pills.
doctors say
Yeah, because some of them, they're really just, there's a lot of factors to consider. So first, there's being able to like harvest these stem cells. It's super, super limited, so we have a very limited supply.
Not the question. Even still around the world right now, it's a very moral topic.
Yeah.
Harvesting stem cells, especially pluripotent stem cells.
Yeah, yeah. I remember reading up on a case that really the bone marrow extraction process isn't great because you're like injected with a needle that's like thick. It's like really big, so it's like, oh, that's gonna hurt.
Kill me instead.
I wouldn't.
Oh my god. Yeah. Basically, some of the trials that they use for stem cell treatments are kind of subjective, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint.
So, I mean, there's that when it comes to the actual problems of the stem cell treatment, I guess. But the biggest thing that we want to look at is the pills because that's the one that's been super, super everywhere.
And we do need clarification on how does it get its efficacy? Why do people believe that it does that? Because I'm sure that when the idea of stem cells or the stem cell therapy entered the Philippines, it would have sounded magical to a lot of people, especially people who aren't well versed scientifically.
Mm-hmm.
They would just die to regenerate
Yeah.
like lizards.
The
Yeah.
obsession is crazy.
Yeah. Isn't that
So it's feeding into a desperate marketing.
Yeah. Isn't there-
People are just taking it at face value when certain descriptors are used. But when the mechanism of how it actually works is not, so
It's rarely elaborated.
yeah,
Yeah.
so they don't know how it actually is supposed to work. So what works and what doesn't work, it's all background noise to them. So
Yeah, so basically how it's getting sold out is that they talk about how there's so much stem cells in your body as a baby and that lessens and lessens and lessens as we get older. To a degree, I mean they're not entirely wrong, but they're not telling the exact truth either. Your body isn't 100% stem cells at birth. That is certainly not true. If you're like, a baby is like 100% stem cells, so like they regenerate so fast. This is why kids heal so fast, and that's why adults like have so much to deal with. Like that's not the case. They're not telling the full story here.
I can see how that plays into like, diba, we were like amongst ethical questions. You're like, oh, we don't want to get embryo stem cells. So if you say a baby is 100% stem cells, would that like feed into the narrative that you kill children just to create these stem cell therapy, just to create resources for the stem cell therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why they don't market it as embryonic stem cell, and then they're like, oh, this is placenta. It's
The placenta elixir of life.
yes.
That's
Yeah, so I guess to like just differentiate that for people, it's even though it we say that it's embryonic stem cells, it's not always taken from the embryo. It's taken from other parts that are not the human being in itself. So the afterbirth, the placenta, that's where a lot of these companies are getting their stem cells from.
and a lot of the problems with having to market it in this way. I think I have a diagram here that we'll just flash somewhere up here.
Up there.
Yeah, up there. Is that okay? Here's one from the company called Placenta Elixir, or Elixir Placenta. I think that's what.
Notice the word elixir.
Yeah, Elixir Placenta, 3-in-1 stem cell therapy. We are not made of drugs. We are made of cells. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so here's one diagram that they showed. It shows the exact diagram. When you're a baby, you have 100% of your stem cells. When you're 18, you have 75%. When you're 35 years old, you have 50% of your stem cells. And when you're 60, you have 10% of your stem cells. So, and it says here, stem cell, vital parts of immune systems that repair and regenerate damaged cells. The less stem cells we have, the faster we age. What do you think about that statement? That does not sound logically true.
Do you feel like you're 75% stem cells right now?
I don't think so. I feel like most of it's specialized.
Well, you wouldn't really know, right? Since you're not in that kind of area of expertise, and that
It's not really our field, yeah.
and that's what these people or doctors tell that.
And the release of stem cells are usually like a mechanism post-injury. Mm-hmm. So the release of new stem cells would go to the area because of a particular, what is the hormonal signal called?
Hey, just cut it out.
Cut that out. Cut that out. Yeah, we'll cut that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't exactly know what it's called, but that's basically the thing with like somatic. It's very much just a response thing. It just happens when like we get a wound or something. Okay, we're gonna regenerate based on
And the directionality of it, because of the particular signal and the code that it's giving to these stem cells, they know exactly what to regenerate into.
yeah, which is why it's adult or like somatic stem cells are far more specialized because they're gonna be very specific to the tissue. They're not like the embryonic or the pluripotent ones that can basically do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So isn't that where we run into some troubles? Because of course we can't deny that stem cell therapy in general is a true thing. It happens. It can help regenerate. But I think modern science is still trying to figure out what codes exactly or how exactly you can crack the code to turn particular embryonic stem cells into particular tissues. This is a directionality that we're currently looking into, which isn't completely formed. So it's a bit weird when these pills try to market themselves as cure-alls. Like they can cure all your diseases, including your aging. They can cure over here, and Celluboost stem cell. The Celluboost stem cell product says it can facilitate cell regeneration, anti-cancer. It has anti-cancer properties. It can improve kidney health, skin health, heart health, multivitamins. And then there are larger lists with other companies, and they vary. It could cure osteoporosis, other things, gout. So
Yeah, you see, like, I'd be a little bit more convinced if they focus on, like, if a certain product focus on, like, certain treatments. But, like, they just list out all these treatments, and, like,
Yeah.
do they really do all of these at the same time? Is it
Yeah.
really that effective?
yeah, so especially knowing how stem cells work, how would your body tell this exact pill that you put into your system that, oh, I really be needing more liver tissue right now?
Like, your body just has,
Yeah.
like, a checklist of priorities.
Yeah, priorities, and then these pills somehow morph into those.
Yeah. Wait, just to like circle back a little bit, did they say that the cells are multivitamins?
Yeah.
How are cells multivitamins? Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I guess that's where the marketing issue comes in place. People here in the Philippines, in my experience, are rather gullible. they would well, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, the
I
be-
would say
I think
so.
everywhere people are gullible.
With some
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
when you're
yeah.
desperate, you're willing
Yeah.
to believe in things that otherwise you wouldn't
Yeah.
believe in if you were
yeah, the
There's
best
a soundness of mind that's lost
Yeah.
when you really want something to be true.
Yeah, and the usage of jargon really is a marketing tactic.
the use
Oh,
of
yeah.
jargon.
Yes, so
Exactly.
Yeah, the best example would be my parents. They got bamboozled by pills.
Bazanas.
Yeah, they got bazassed.
magic pills.
Yeah.
I mean, if you consider like even in first world countries, the stem cells are like not really as much elaborated on, and most the population in those developed countries that are very educated, they're still not as much aware of like the actual stem cell research. So you can imagine here in the Philippines now, we're not as developed as those countries, and like imagine the introduction of those new stem cell research fields of us. It's a little bit puzzling. Like, I don't think we should expect that the population would be aware of these things and would be cautious. Like, if a doctor told them like, "Whoa, oh, these stem cell pills work," I mean, who are they to doubt the doctor? Really, like,
Yeah.
that's also one thing.
Yeah, but then there's a doctor anxiety here in the country because, for one, medical healthcare here is poor.
Yeah.
At least the incentive that people can get. Sure, particular segments of the population under a particular poverty threshold can get free treatment, but the threshold is too small.
Yeah.
It's too small. Poverty is larger than the threshold wants to admit.
Yeah.
And so, because of that, I think it's been a while that people were unable to afford treatment. So, the medical field in general starts to get stigmatized.
Yeah.
And people start turning to other forms of medicine, to cheaper forms like alternative medicine, and perhaps even this cure-all solutions that don't seem as painful as chemo if you have cancer, that don't seem to be as expensive as the whole term of treatment. So they try to make clear cuts.
I mean, consider also like the established treatments are like very long term. So imagine like you just offer like pills. You just take pills and then it will somehow work apparently. Instead of like long surgeries now. Oh, you do the surgery, come back to me in 6 months, and then come back to me in 12 months. That's a little bit too long for some people.
There's a bit of a fallacy then going around that, oh, they're natural anyways. What's the harm? The worst is that it's not gonna work. Yeah. I feel like that's something that circulates a lot in these Facebook groups and the whole tito tita vibe thing that they're like, oh, what's the worst that could happen? The worst is it's not going to work, not thinking that there might actually be worse consequences because that's the worst that they're gonna be thinking. It just doesn't work.
There will be though.
Yeah.
Like, I heard that if you consume, or maybe especially if you inject, because there's some stem cell drip. There's like some stem cell dripping offered by doctors who don't specialize in it, which is weird. Because of since you can't really direct how these stem cells will, especially if you're talking about these stem cell pills, the problem is they may form into tissues on their own, and with no directionality, these may turn into cysts, tumors, teratomas especially. These are the types of tumors that differentiate on their own. They have teeth, they have eye tissue, they have hair.
Yes.
They seem like malformed babies sometimes, pero yeah.
Yeah, but we're kind of not here to fearmonger about that.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
It's just more of a thing that has happened in some exceptional cases, but it's still quite a big risk that
see.
it's still a public health concern. But it's not to the point that you need
Yeah,
to
you
scare
will.
people.
Yeah, you will
Yeah.
grow like
I mean, we're more so
an extra head under.
Come on.
And either way, it's not like we're going to like plaster it on our cigarette
No.
boxes.
Yeah, it doesn't really go that far, especially with the regulations that we had available. It kind of super limited.
Yeah, we're more so addressing the idea that, oh, just because it doesn't have, like their point is that, well, if it's not positive, then it's just neutral. But no, it can actually dip into the negatives.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Yeah.
Well, concerning the regulations in the Philippines, there's not really a lot of laws concerning stem cell pills. However, in other countries, there are. And the thing is, what's funny about that is, as long as the label is there, or the the, the idea of it being good, it's actually allowed to be publicized, in public,
Advertised.
advertised. And that's the problem. So what you're telling me is, if the label is on the specific pill, and the manufacturer says it's good, it's automatically shipped out and advertised to people. What if it causes a bad reaction to the people who take it? Like what Miguel said, it's not really the best option, and the risk is, there's nothing bad going to happen. I don't think that's really much of a motivating factor. Well, for some people it is. However, would you really be inclined to take something, to intake something that you don't really have enough knowledge about it? I think that's common sense, that if you're willing to intake something, you should at least know know the foundations of it, right? And that's the thing about their marketing. Again, people are desperate. Here in the Philippines, people are desperate. Best example would be my parents. They are desperate for looking young, and I do think that influences other people into wanting to be young as well, since they do believe that, oh, you look young, so I would also want to look young too. So
Yeah, real.
Yeah. But
so,
in general, dude, I think the eternal youth narrative is really, really unhealthy.
yeah.
Especially in the way that these stem cell products utilize it, because they make it seem, especially with that whole diagram on, um, you have less stem cells as you grow older, and this particular diagram that says um, diva stem cells. Yeah, sorry.
Miguel, ano ba? Huwag mo hawakan yung mic.
Okay, you can. And then you just.
Stop.
Especially this particular diagram that says, that talks about how you have to rejuvenate your cells, replicate good cells, restore six cells, replace your dead cells, repair your damaged cells, which most of these are already natural processes that your body does on its own. But then it has to specify, it brings back the body back to its normal functionality, as if in particular cases, since we're talking about age, as if aging isn't natural. The dying out of particular cells, or your cells reaching a maximum, their maximum encoding of how many times they can repeat isn't natural. And so you have to extend, put yourself on a leash.
Yeah. And my problem about that is, do they really have enough proof that this kind of treatment actually works? Do they actually put public announcements of, oh, look at this guy. This guy actually looks young. I think there are some in Facebook, right, Miguel? I'm not sure.
Yeah, there are a lot of like fake.
Yeah, I do
Well,
think
we
it's
don't
fake.
know if it's fake.
Yeah, we don't know it's
Because
fake.
we can also talk about placebo.
Yeah.
Well, we can't just say like, oh, because you believe in it, it's going to come true. Pero placebo does seem to enlighten some symptoms because of some areas in your brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, which is very much involved in imaging. Uh, and all of the things that happen in a particular brain regions, which I'll get into later when you reach a particular part of our segment. Uh, that helps you, or that helps at least alleviate some parts of your pain.
Ano?
Because if you have a preconception that, oh, this is going to occur, because even in psychiatry, they say that's important. If you take antidepressants, if you take anxiety pills, you have to believe that particular phenomenon is going to occur, that you're going to get better. Because if you keep on denying it, it's kind of the chemicals that are produced will
Yeah.
counterbalance the chemicals that are given to you by the pills to fight it.
Yeah.
So literally, you run into stagnation, and you may even overpower the effect of the pills. So, speaking outside of the pill diagram that they showed us, yeah, when you think something's gonna work, when you perceive things in a particular way, you see the context. The doctor tells you, oh, it's gonna get better after this. You see the injection, you subconsciously associated with healing, that it has a substance that will heal you. Then you'll feel a bit more confidence afterwards. A lot of studies show that people feel relieved. Sometimes people feel fake symptoms, or like symptoms of feeling better because of endorphin boosts, because of opioid boosts in the body
Yeah.
that make you feel like everything's getting lighter for you. When really, the actual problem that is supposedly being treated for doesn't really get any better, but you as a person feel like it's actually improving. So yeah, that could be true. Maybe someone had a bit of a wound here, and because of, not necessarily because of the treatment itself, but when the treatment started subsiding and because they were happy and felt like they were getting better on the way to it, they would attribute it instantly to the stem cell cells
Yeah.
rather than realizing that, oh, the stem cells feels just made me feel better because it said it would, but the reason why a particular wound in me healed, or why the bruise disappeared, or why the lump on my neck grew smaller is completely unrelated to that I took these pills. And so I think those testimonies that come out in part are kind of dangerous
They are.
because, you know, it's people who don't know what's actually happening, or people who fake what's actually happening, telling other people that, oh, you should join in on the venture either as business persons and promote selling it, or you should buy the pills themselves, which come in packages of like 2K, 6K for like 30, 50 pieces.
Yeah, and I think what's kind of messed up about that is that these people who are convinced into selling are basically conditioned into thinking that I'm doing something good for the community, that I'm providing a service that these doctors are gatekeeping.
They kind of feel privileged knowing about that kind.
Yeah, it's kind of a moral high ground, and it kind of provides people like, oh, you don't need to go to the doctor, you can do this instead.
Are you aware of the MLM schemes? Right?
Yeah.
It's like multi-level marketing, and like basically they just like market it to certain people, and those people become like super believers in that thing that they want to themselves to market it to other people. So it kind of spreads, sort of like a pyramid scheme and all that. So
Yeah,
there's that risk also.
I mean, a lot of these companies follow a similar pattern to pyramid schemes because, of course, someone buys, and then you're like, oh, you should convince your friends who are sick to buy too, and then that grows and grows and grows.
Sometimes it's not even subtle. If you look at one of the programs, I think it's Diva. What is it called again? If you look at one of the programs, if it's Diva Secret, they literally have a post over that says, "Oh, try the pills and work for us, and sell it to 2 more people, and make them work for you, and make sure that they sell it to 2 more people." It's literally a pyramid scheme. It's including the numbers of individuals.
You know the meme, double it and give it to the next person.
That's the thing. They're not even subtle about it. A lot of people aren't even educated about what a pyramid scheme is.
Yeah. Are we pausing for a bit?
Yeah, for
Pause.
Look on it.
Let's go.
yeah. What do you think of the concept of placebo? Because that's one argument that people could use for this, that it doesn't necessarily have to work, but if it eases people's anxieties, whether or not it supplies a weird economic model, if it eases people's anxieties, if it prompts relief, if it creates chemical reactions or chemical solutions that make it seem like the illness is more bearable or that you're getting better, then since in a way, like folk medicine or people who turn to folk medicine, it makes you secure rather than insecure. And therefore, it's better than nothing.
It depends on the risk reward. Like if the risk outweighs the reward or like the good that it's doing, it's kind of this whole thing is kind of really in a gray area. Placebos are kind of yeah.
I mean, to me, the psychological effect is obviously really important, because if you believe in something, like your brain will kind of assist that notion with like. Also, like I feel like that should just come in. That this kind of comes in with, like, it should also be joined with actual positive effects. Like, I don't think we should over rely on like placebo effect and all that.
Yeah. It does have some negative connotations, because the placebo literally means it pleases. So it kind of pleases you. But then if we're talking about the brain effect, that is true. The
Yeah.
brain does assist you in many ways. Like saying, Like especially if you want to talk about breakups or how bad it is, or rejection, if you're rejected from your friend group, it's kind of the same from being punched, because the same brain regions that are in charge of physical pain are also in charge of emotional and social pain. So when you go from a bad breakup, you would just expect to be sad, but no. Some of the physical cues that respond to illness, like fevers, you get cramping,
Yeah.
your
Yeah, it's true.
serotonin levels go up. Sorry, not serotonin. Your serotonin levels drop, and your cortisol levels go up.
Yeah.
And because of that, your body stiffens. You're acting away. Maybe you pee too often. Maybe you pee less. Your body is sort of
Relatable.
restricted feeling.
Yeah.
And those are all physical responses to injury that you get
Yeah.
post social interaction that you didn't really agree with.
Yeah.
And in the same way, if you feel very positively about something, it would boost your immune system.
Yeah.
And then it would help you recover quickly from illnesses. And chances are, serotonin levels could rise if you feel like an particular pill is really working for you. So with endorphin levels, and so that would assist at least a fever.
Yeah.
When we talk about the realm of placebo, it's kind of blurry. Because these scholars who did like a message, who did like a paper called Meaning and Use of Placebo, Philosophical Considerations on how people in the academic community at least should be talking about placebo, is that how they speak of it now is very, I wouldn't say one note, but it's too varied to give a definition, which is a bit wild. Because if you're going to write a medical paper and label something as placebo, you have to be sure, at least uniformly, what exactly you mean like that, because there's a lot of confusion. One first definition of placebo is literally a pill. Oh yeah, literally a supplement or a treatment plan that does not have any effect. Which, as you know, is kind of a logical fallacy in itself, because everything we do would kind of have a biological effect on our body, contrary to what they're saying. Because if you eat chalk or sugar, because a lot of placebos are made of those chalk or sugar inside fake pills. If you eat those still have a biological effect. It still goes in,
Yeah.
in some aspect. And if you eat those and in a way you rationalize it, the rationalization also has a psychological effect and the biological effect by producing the hormones that particular moods produce. And that still affects the body. So you can't say that the pills, even though the pills don't have an effect in general, because they do. That's the point of placebo, that something works in your mind and in your body that makes it feel like something's happening. And there's the other alternate definition, which is which talks about placebo as just the psychological fact baseline. You can be treated for something completely, but then placebo is whatever mental state or whatever altered mental state you have that helps facilitate it, either post or pre-treatment. So whatever the effect is that doesn't come directly from the point of the treatment, like let's say you get chemo, but you feel happier, and that wasn't, that isn't a direct cause of chemo, that's still placebo, because it's something that happened indirect of the treatment, because you believed in it. That's still chemo. That's still placebo, I mean.
Yeah.
So that's also an altered definition of it. And there's one more definition which is kind of at the midpoint of the two, which I won't get to right now. But the point is, people don't really know how to define placebo. There are a lot of altered definitions. And so I think people should stick to a baseline before we can say what it is. But in general, I think some categories that exist right now, which we can classify placebo is the placebo at the very least a pure placebo or an impure placebo. And you might be thinking, what do I mean by that? A pure placebo is literally something that is not intended to have an effect on you at all. Let's say like, oh, this cube of sugar has like a secret pill inside, is going to cure you of your cancer. That's not expected to have any effect on you, so that's a pure placebo. An impure placebo is, let's say it's a supplement that's supposed to treat something but not necessarily treat the illness directly. So it's like people who undergo chemo, and get like a particular vitamins, and that necessarily won't get rid of the cancer, but that's also going to help.
So in impure placebo, you could generally say it's like an unintended psychological side effect.
I know, that's one of the, I think in general they all incorporate that conception.
All of them.
But the how relevant that is or how they classify it like differs. So either it has to be from something fake, or it has to, or it's just like a side effect of anything.
Yep.
Whatever altered effect is not cannot be directly attributed to the treatment in itself.
Okay, that's fair.
So where do you think we would classify these stem cell pills? Do these stem cell pills have any impure? Do these stem cell pills classify as impure because they have an alternative effect? Because they do. When you did state that it could be very harmful.
Yeah, but for, I mean, it's kind of hard because, in a way, of course, they're going to have an effect, but also, I feel like it lives in such a weird gray area that because it's already something that's not regulated, we don't even know if these stem cell pills are stem cells at all.
Diba?
Yeah, so it's really hard to judge because they can claim that, oh, it's stem cells, but it's this weird white powder that looks like it comes from a coffee sachet. So like, is it really stem cells? Are they just claiming that it's stem cells, or is it
Like,
actually like a
shock.
crushed up placenta or something? We can't because of
Where did
how
they get the placenta?
Exactly.
Where did they get the placenta?
I
They got
mean,
it from a clinic.
Organ trafficking markets.
They got it from a clinic, and where did the clinic come from?
wait, we're gonna
Diba?
Did the clinic get? Did the clinic get thoroughly checked? I don't know.
Or did someone working at like and they just secretly behind the scenes give out samples of. Well, anyway, that's besides the point. What?
Yeah, but anyways, because of how unregulated it is, we see that the whole no approved therapeutic claims idea in Philippine law is basically just a loophole for people to be able to sell what they want, how they want it. And this whole labeling thing, especially with these unregulated products circulating social media, it's really, really hard to tell if the products that they're marketing are actually anything accurate to the products that they're actually selling. What they're showing versus what they're selling, that's obviously not the same thing. We've all bought something from online that's not what we ordered.
So some of them are like some of these advertisements say they're flavored. Like there's a freaking grape flavored one. And if it's fake, do they just like put tang grape juice sa loob ng capsule tapos they sell that? It's kinda
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it's such a weird field to look into that you really need to get into a lot of nuances with this gray area
And
because
even
it's so gray.
getting into the fact that they're not even approved by the government. Because when we talk about placebo, even in the academic field, when we talk about the problem with placebo, one big issue is the ethics of it. Is it okay to lie to your patients, even if it brings them happiness?
Yeah.
Because a lot of it breaks the code of confidentiality and of trust between doctor and patient, that you
Yeah.
have to give them the right diagnosis, that you won't intentionally trick them into doing something that's not lawful. And so that's an entirely different area onto itself. But if we talk about these people who are, say, proudly lying about the effects of these, or who are trying to trick gullible minds into buying these, or desperate people into buying these, or proliferating a harmful system of more people who think they actually are helpful selling these, then where does it fall in the domain?
I mean, it's kind of like a slippery slope. It's like if you allow that sort of lying to an extent, like where does it end? Like at what point is lying okay? At what point is it not? Does it like? Because if you do those things, like kind of opens up an avenue where you can do more trickery, and that's really becomes it snowballs into more of an ethical problem. It's good.
Yeah. The
If
whole,
I did the philosophy of medicine now, it would take like an hour more. Anyway,
Probably
go.
not, but like
but basically the idea of like, oh, the whole do no harm thing and how this whole placebo thing may or may not violate that. Because technically, if it's placebo, are you really doing any harm? other than the emotional
Yeah.
and
And
psychological harm.
especially if
physically.
you market it as something and there's no supplemental treatment. Because sure, if you're a doctor, usually when you give out placebo, there is a supplemental treatment there. The placebo is just, oh, it makes you happier or something. So the patient feels more at ease. Pero here, you're actually marketing it as something capable of doing something that it's not actually capable of doing. So instead of seeking actual treatment that may be able to help them, they're just falling deeper and deeper into their illusion that this is going to be the what fixes them.
Yeah.
But in either case, you can't blame them sometimes because treatment is expensive. If this is the cheaper alternative to them, it's the cheaper alternative to them. There's nothing that's going to change that. So it's also a structural issue in the end of it.
So, like, I mean, we've talked a lot about stem cell research, ethics, moral applications, and the actual science itself, and the placebo effect, of course. So, the main thing here is that, like, yeah, we've been a little bit critical on stem cell research, but at the end of the day, stem cell research is really a new field, and I don't think we should like entirely discredit it because it's a new emerging field, and like there's a lot of potential for actually healthy technologies. So, I think the main point here is that we need to develop a holistic, a healthier perspective on stem cells. So, first of all, let's get it out of the way. Stem cell research, there's been a lot of medical breakthroughs. So, yung sinabi mo kanina is like, there's bone marrow transplants, which help in like leukemia, and it helps in skin grafts, and of course, there's also a lot of stem cell therapies for heart disease, and then overall the generation of the muscles and all that. And so, yeah, it is still a gray area of sorts. But that's the thing, it's an emerging field, so we don't know if it's entirely positive, we don't know if it's entirely negative. So we just need to keep it in mind that it's a new field and there's a lot of room for potential. And next, of course, like it addresses a lot of things like neurological disorders, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease. Those
The thing about those is the ethical consideration is what would help is menstrual blood. It's
That's
very
true.
effective against Alzheimer's.
That's
Pero
true.
of course, if someone with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's hear that, oh, we're gonna apply menstrual blood,
Yeah, they're gonna freeze.
yeah, it's kind of freaky to them. It does help, but it is a helpful thing. It would be helpful, but there's of course stigma around what's gross, what's not gross, what's ethical to
that's true.
source,
Yeah.
what's not ethical to source. So maybe in the future.
Maybe.
So yeah, I mean, of course, there's a lot of limitations. Like we like in both the academe, the public, and the government. Like we need to collectively decide like where exactly are the boundaries of stem cell research. So, of course, governments around the world, like Australia, the U.S., and all their institutions, and even here in the Philippines, like we still need to work out like how do we oversee all these new applications and like what regulations do we need to put in place to ensure that stem cell research becomes a positive and not just be like overwhelmed with a lot of like fake marketing tactics, like
Yeah.
the magic pills and all those things. So there's also of course the ethical concern of you mentioned earlier in embryonic stem cells, like stem cells from embryos. It doesn't really, there's obviously a really big stigma around it and ethical considerations and getting it from babies down all that.
In a predominantly Christian country, that's a harder thing to turn around
Yeah.
perspective-wise.
Maybe even outside of a Christian morals perspective, there's still obviously a lot of considerations around that particular issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think would be the main obstacle in sexualization?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we're gonna have to deal with is the whole pseudoscience that goes around it.
True.
It's because I mean a lot of people have a propensity to believe in the pseudosciences because that's what's interesting. That's what's so eye-catching compared to like hard sciences that are full of jargon that I don't get it.
Who wants to believe that like small, slimy, hairy humans made the pyramids, diba? Obviously made by whales. I mean, they could lift blocks that big.
Yeah. It's like Hulk.
I mean, like I said, there's also a new field, so there's a lot of new possible marketing like schemes and segments they can do.
Yeah, and,
So-
and a lot of people who think they're good, who think they're doctors.
Yeah, di ba marami like you know okay. You mentioned your parents like we like my family likes to make fun of my grandma. We call her doctor, even though she's not a doctor. It's like she always keeps talking about these medicines like, oh, in Indian like, oh, this medicine works this way, oh, this medicine works. So sometimes we call her, DOH secretary as a joke. Pero,
Yeah.
yeah, apparently there's a lot of like, I mean, us also like,
Exactly.
apparently there's a lot of sense of pride in like having medical knowledge, which isn't a bad thing, but we also need to hold ourselves more accountable for it, like be more open to perspective. So I guess you mentioned earlier na well, the main issue now with the new field of stem cell research is going to be addressing pseudoscience. So I think there's a lot of ways naman to spot pseudoscience. So the biggest red flag would be how they advertise the health products. So you can tell when they use a lot of when they overuse superlatives like magic pills or what is the thing earlier? Elixir.
Elixir of life.
So just beware of like
Diva's secret. Who's Diva and why does she have a secret?
parang Victoria's Secret.
What is Victoria's secret though?
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
What is Diva's secret? I want to know more about
Diva?
Diva.
Well, apparently it's regeneration shit.
Okay.
Di kasi sinasabi doon ng mga matatanda. That's why we have to believe it.
But they're divas?
No,
Isn't that like
no, do you know the line like dahil sabi ng mga matatanda? And that's the problem with it. Dahil sabi ng mga matatanda, these ignorant people think that it's right just because it came from their reliable source, right?
But why? Yung lola ko, she sends me like, oh, this chocolate is repackaged from the dirt. And then they feed it to people. And then she sends me a banana na ini-inject ng kung ano. And she's like, be careful about your bananas. They could have secret fluid inside. And I'm like, I'm allergic to bananas, but thanks. It's
Fair. Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, this comes back to like, you need to check if there's scientific backing. So like, your products like, there's no harm naman in asking, is there established evidence or facts that will support your claims for these? And if they're really telling the truth, then of course back it up. But if they don't, that's a big red flag. And also we need to take into account like they're obviously going to use testimonies, debuting. They're going to bring testimonies from these individuals. But again, you mentioned earlier, placebo effect. What if it's just placebo? So we can't rely on individual testimonies without backing evidence. So there needs to be a lot of intersection of evidence. So there needs to be personal, and then academic, and then from doctors and scientific evidence and all of that. So I guess another way to spot pseudoscience would be, of course, to consult your medical professionals. I mean, of course, you can't just appeal to authority now. Whatever the doctor says is right. I mean, you also have to do your own research. At the end of the day, these doctors still study these things for a living, and like, you need to check up with the medical authorities. It's like if you just go on Facebook and then you search online stem cell pills.
Oh, there are a lot of doctors there.
Yeah.
doctor.
There are a lot of doctors
Yeah.
there.
But like, tingnan mo yung PhD nila, PhD from Atlantis University. I don't know about that.
Atlantis University.
Worked at the Krabby Patty. Some people
Uh,
do that.
work at the
Yeah.
Krabby
So-called
Patty.
works at the Krabby
Works
Patty.
at the Krabby Patty.
So
And even then, I think it might be an eventual problem because if people do wake up and realize that, oh, this was all pseudoscience, and the stem cell, the entire field of stem cell academic research, those actually prop up and stabilize into giving beneficial things. I think the trauma from having undergone like this
Yeah.
skeptical era that harmed a lot of people would
Yeah.
make them skeptical to accept something that's more grounded.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's one of the big issues too. Is that pseudoscience also impedes actual science because it feeds into the like skepticism narrative where people start doubting things that are actually good and that impedes progress research. For example, you know, like vaccines, diba? Like there's initially there was a lot of pseudoscience surrounding vaccines. So parang nag-develop ng anti-vax movement. And then that snowballed into like people discrediting actual vaccines that work. So there's also that issue that needs to be tackled.
Vaccine is the sign of the devil.
Yeah.
Or China has like microchips in your vaccine.
Don't get vaccine or else you will be trapped forever.
Yeah.
I mean, a good rule of thumb I like to work by, I mean, that I also like to tell the older generation, at least in my family, is just if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't true.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's easy for us to be able to say that, oh, we need to look for evidence, we need to. But if you tell older people or people who don't have as much access to education, you tell them, oh, you need to do your research. Ano yun? Ba't ka magre-research? Exactly. So the whole idea of needing to do research, I feel like that comes from a very privileged standpoint of us
Yeah.
being in the academe then.
Parang elitist or something.
Very elitist.
Kinda.
It's
And
sort
to
of.
be fair, even the internet is full of papers that aren't really actual papers.
That's
And
true.
informational videos that only perseverate harmful things. Like, I was playing that video, you were watching it too, the
Yes.
video about stem cells, and it looked so upfront. It was saying like basic facts that we all know about stem cells. And then suddenly it says, buy our pill collection towards the end of the video. So,
Yeah.
That
it's
part
a
is kinda
bit,
sus.
yeah, that
Yeah.
part's kind of sus din eh.
Yeah, so yeah.
So there's also responsibility on the part of the academic community,
Yeah.
where they have to, science communication, just like what we're trying to do right now. They should be able to communicate these things effectively. And one problem then is, I guess, research papers not being out for the public.
Yeah.
So even especially medical papers,
Plus, would they really read it?
yeah, would they read
Yeah.
it? But having them out to the public is a good first step.
Yeah.
I guess a good thing they could do is transform it into very easy to read informatives that people would actually read
Yeah.
and entertain
Yeah.
rather than
Sorry, diba?
the whole paper that people wouldn't really read the first sentence.
Yeah.
Like, come
I
on.
mean, like us, we have a lot of time to do research, but most of the population, let's be real, they're like working every day, so they don't really have
Yeah.
taking care of families. They don't really have the time to do research, especially like those things.
Yeah, let's be honest. If the title isn't really to their liking, they wouldn't read it.
Yeah.
And if they would read it, they would look for the words that they would want
Yeah.
to read.
So what do you think would be more effective? Like debunking posts or actual informative posts? Because debunking posts would actually, if you give it a title, it'd be like, these pills are evil, all caps, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, 100% from hell. And people would click that.
Yeah, people would click.
As opposed to, let's say we have like a simple informative video, like something that talks about stem cells compared to these cells will cure everything in your body, sort of bullcrap. That
I guess it goes both
So
ways,
if we're-
man. You don't really
yeah,
know.
but if we're talking about the positives, it's harder.
Yeah.
You would notice that it's kind of harder. Like if a fact is not as spectacular or wowing as something that you can make up, people would tend to go for the one that's more spectacular or wowing. And that's why, for some reason, oppositional posts are more powerful because you can use the same amount of exaggeration to debunk the same level of bull crap that's coming from the other end.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with the sensationalist culture nowadays.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now that we've talked about the legal, the placebo effect, the healthcare, what we can do about it, what are the things we should do about it, people who think that it's a good thing, what do we think about that? And yeah, we've talked about what we think about that. So, how about you guys? What do you guys think about that?
Oh, that's not.
No.
One more. Wanna see my lolo?